Your boss knows exactly how much is in your savings account without ever looking at your bank statement. They don't need your login credentials to know if you're a hostage. They can see it in the way you hold eye contact during a performance review. They can hear it in the slight hesitation before you agree to a project you don't have time for. They can feel it in your compliance. Because there is a specific biological frequency emitted by a person who cannot afford to be unemployed for more than 3 weeks. It is the chemistry of prey, and it is the most expensive psychological state you will ever inhabit. Today, we are going to break that chemistry. There is a number that functions as a surgical strike against corporate leverage. It isn't $1 million. It isn't even your full emergency fund. It is $10,000 sitting in liquid cash in an account your employer will never touch. $10,000 is the exact threshold where your brain stops processing your job as a survival mechanism and starts processing it as a commercial transaction. The moment you hit this number, your nervous system undergoes a fundamental reset. You stop being a safe employee and start becoming a sovereign operator. And ironically, that is the exact moment you become more valuable to the market than you have ever been in your entire career. On this channel, we analyze the hidden power dynamics that dictate who gains autonomy and who stays trapped in the paycheck loop. Today, I am showing you why $10,000 is the minimum viable freedom and how this specific amount of capital acts as a hostage breaker, ending the cycle of paycheck gaslighting forever. To understand how this works, we have to look at Mark. Mark is 42 years old. He is a senior analyst in Chicago making $94,000 a year. By every external metric of the middle class, Mark is successful. He has the title. He has the LinkedIn endorsements. He has the office with a view. But Mark has $1,600 in his checking account. Mark doesn't think of himself as a hostage. He thinks of himself as a professional. But Mark's director understands Mark's reality perfectly. When the director asks Mark to stay late on a Friday for the 3rd week in a row, Mark says yes. He doesn't say yes because he's ambitious. He says yes because his subconscious mind has done the math. If Mark says no, and that no leads to a conflict, and that conflict leads to a termination, Mark's life collapses in 21 days. His mortgage, his car payment, his children's tuition, they are all tethered to a single thread. And that thread is held by someone who doesn't even know his middle name. This is what I call the compliance tax. Last year, Mark's lack of a $10,000 cushion cost him far more than just his weekends. It cost him a 4% salary adjustment because he was too afraid to push back on a mediocre review. It cost him $600 in medical copays for stress-related insomnia. It cost him the ability to look for a new role because he was too exhausted from performing loyalty to actually update his portfolio. Added up, not having $10,000 cost Mark roughly $12,000 in lost income and health expenses in a single year. He paid a premium for his own fragility. And in the corporate world, everyone can smell fragility from a mile away. Modern employment is built on the assumption of your precariousness. Companies don't just hire your skills, they hire your need. They optimize for the employee who is talented enough to be useful, but broke enough to be manageable. This isn't a conspiracy. It is simply the path of least resistance for any hierarchy. A manager's job is significantly easier when the team cannot afford to disagree. This creates the captive economy, a system where you trade your silence and your health for the illusion of stability, while the real stability is being extracted from you in the form of your time. Now, let's look at the alternative. Let's look at Sarah. Sarah is 34 years old. She is a project manager in the same city, earning slightly less than Mark, $82,000. But Sarah did something that corporate training manuals never suggest. She prioritized the hostage breaker threshold. It took her 14 months of aggressive, disciplined accumulation. She didn't buy a new car. She didn't upgrade her apartment when she got her last raise. She stayed in her entry-level lifestyle while her income moved to mid-career. And last month, she crossed the $10,000 line. The day she reached $10,000, Sarah didn't feel rich. You don't buy a yacht with $10,000. But something happened in her brain that is more valuable than any luxury good. Her amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for the fight-or-flight response, calmed down. Because for Sarah, $10,000 represents 4 months of survival. If her company announces layoffs tomorrow, Sarah will be fine until next quarter. If her boss becomes abusive, Sarah has a 16-week runway to find a better environment. This is what I call operator chemistry. When Sarah walked into her quarterly review last Tuesday, her boss felt it immediately. Sarah didn't have to say a word about her savings. She didn't have to be aggressive. In fact, she was more relaxed than ever. She asked direct questions about the direction of the department. She leaned back in her chair. She didn't use the high-pitched, submissive customer service voice that Mark uses when he's nervous. Why? Because Sarah wasn't negotiating for her life. She was negotiating for her time. When you have $10,000, you stop asking if they will like you and start asking if you like this deal. This shift is what I call decision immunity. It is the ability to evaluate a career move based on its long-term logic rather than its short-term survival. When Sarah's boss suggested that she take over a failing project that would require 60-hour weeks with no extra pay, Sarah didn't blink. She looked at the data, calculated the impact on her other objectives, and calmly said that she can do it, but they will need to deprioritize 2 other projects to make it sustainable, and asked which ones should move. The old Sarah, the Sarah with $900 in savings, would have apologized for not being able to do it all, then stayed until midnight trying to prove her worth. The new Sarah offered a trade. She offered a solution from a position of strength. Her boss didn't fire her. He wasn't even angry. He respected her. He saw her as a peer rather than a servant. This is the great irony of the corporate world. The more you need the job, the less you are respected. The less you need it, the more you are treated as an asset. Banks and corporations depend on you staying in the fragility zone. This is the zone where your savings are less than 3 months of expenses. In this zone, you are predictable. You are manageable. You are a captive audience for their demands. $10,000 is the exact amount of energy required to achieve escape velocity from that zone. It is the point where the gravity of the paycheck loop loses its grip on your decision-making process. Let's break down the math of why 10,000 is the magic number for the hostage breaker. For most professionals, $10,000 covers the bridge period. This is the time it takes to refresh a resume, activate a network, go through 3 rounds of interviews, and receive a signing bonus from a new firm. It is the cost of a transition. When you are below 10,000, you are not in transition. You are falling. When you are above, you are pivoting. The difference between a fall and a pivot is the presence of a cushion. This is the biology of the hostage breaker. In a world of increasing volatility, where loyalty has been removed from the corporate balance sheet, your only defense is your liquidity. $10,000 is not just money. It is a psychological barrier that prevents your employer from owning your mental health. It is the insurance policy against the economy of gaslighting. When your company tells you that you are lucky to be there or that the market is tough right now, the person with $0 believes them. The person with $10,000 checks their bank account and realizes that they are the one who truly controls the clock. Think about it. Why do companies offer free snacks, game rooms, and gym memberships instead of simply increasing your base salary by the same amount? Because perks cannot be saved. Perks keep you comfortable inside the office, but they don't build your hostage breaker. A company would rather spend $5,000 on a vibrant office culture than give you those same $5,000 in cash, because cash gives you the option to leave. Culture gives you a reason to stay, but the cash cushion gives you the power to choose. When you don't have those $10,000, you pay what I call the compliance premium. It is the invisible cost of saying yes when you want to say no. It is the cost of lost sleep, Sunday anxiety, and the slow erosion of your own professional integrity. Over time, this premium adds up. It becomes an identity debt that most people never manage to pay off. But with $10,000, that debt is canceled. You start operating under a different set of rules. This is why the first $10,000 is the hardest money you will ever earn. It isn't just about the math of saving. It's about the psychological warfare required to get there. To reach the hostage breaker threshold, you have to fight against the very system that designed your professional life. Most people never make it because the system has built-in defense mechanisms to keep your liquidity low. Think about the social pressure to celebrate a promotion with a luxury purchase. Think about the way credit card companies target you the moment your income increases. Think about how your peers talk about debt as if it were a mandatory part of adulthood. These are not coincidences. They are the guardrails that keep you in the fragility zone. Let's go back to Mark. Mark feels the weight of his $1,600 balance every single day, even if he doesn't realize it. It shows up in his stress spending. Because Mark feels like a hostage at work, he feels he needs a reward on the weekends to make the sacrifice worth it. He buys the high-end electronics, the expensive dinners, and the premium subscriptions because they provide a temporary hit of dopamine that masks the underlying anxiety of his precariousness. He is spending money he doesn't have to buy a sense of freedom he hasn't earned. This is the escape loop. The more trapped you feel, the more you spend to forget you are trapped, which ensures that you stay trapped. Sarah broke the escape loop by understanding a fundamental truth. True luxury is not what you own. It's what you can say no to. During her 14-month sprint to $10,000, Sarah practiced what I call the audit of compliance. Every time she felt the urge to spend, she asked herself, does this purchase give me more power than $10,000 in the bank? The answer was almost always no. She realized that a 3-year-old car and a modest apartment were a small price to pay for the ability to look her boss in the eye without fear. She traded the image of success for the reality of sovereignty. Once you reach the $10,000 mark, a new concept enters your life: the risk budget. Below this number, your risk budget is zero. You cannot afford to take a chance on a new startup, you cannot afford to pivot to a different industry, and you certainly cannot afford to stand up for an unpopular but correct idea in a boardroom. You are forced to play it safe. But playing it safe is the most dangerous long-term strategy in a shifting economy. It leaves you vulnerable to the slow decay of inflation and the sudden shock of automation. The person with $10,000 has a risk budget. They can afford to be wrong for a few months. They can afford to invest in a new skill that might not pay off immediately. They can afford to speak the truth in meetings, even when it's uncomfortable. And here is the secret that the corporate world doesn't want you to know. The people who get promoted are rarely the ones who are the most compliant. They are the ones who demonstrate the most leadership. And leadership is impossible without the willingness to take a risk. By building your hostage breaker, you are literally buying the psychological foundation required to lead. To build this foundation, you need to follow what I call the sovereign sequence. Most people get the order wrong. They try to invest in the stock market or buy real estate before they have secured their own internal peace of mind. They are building a house on a swamp. The sovereign sequence requires you to secure your biosecurity first. Step 1 is the liquidity sprint. This is a period of 3 to 12 months where every excess cent is redirected to a high-yield account that is separate from your daily spending. You don't look at the market. You don't look at crypto. You look at one number: 10,000. Step 2 is the decoupling of identity. You have to stop seeing your job as who you are and start seeing it as a client you serve. When Mark loses his job, he loses his identity. When Sarah loses her job, she loses a client. The emotional stakes are completely different. This decoupling is only possible when you have the cash to back it up. The money acts as a mental firewall between your self-worth and your employer's opinion of you. Step 3 is the calibration of the gaze. This sounds like a minor detail, but it changes everything. When you know you have $10,000, your physical presence changes. You stop slouching. Your voice becomes lower and more resonant. You stop using filler words like and just and sorry. You are no longer asking for permission to exist in the office. You are there because you have chosen to be there. This is the moment you stop being a safe employee and start becoming a high-value operator. The system detects this change instantly. Your manager, your colleagues, and even your clients start treating you with a different level of deference. Not because they know about your bank account, but because they can sense that you are no longer a hostage. Step 4 in the sovereign sequence is the expansion of your negotiation surface. When your bank balance is measured in hundreds, your negotiation surface is a pinprick. You can only negotiate for small, inconsequential things, maybe a better chair or a slightly different start time, because any real conflict threatens your survival. But with $10,000, you become a plane. Your surface expands. You can now negotiate for the fundamental terms of your labor. You can ask for a 4-day work week, for full remote flexibility, or for a performance-based bonus that reflects your actual value. You can do this because you have removed the death sentence from the word no. Sarah used this expanded surface to change her entire career trajectory within 6 months of reaching her hostage breaker threshold. She was approached by a recruiter for a competing firm. The offer was for 20% more than her current salary. The old Sarah, the one with $900 in savings, would have jumped at it immediately, trading one cage for a slightly bigger one. But the new Sarah did something different. She used the offer as leverage to fix the environment she actually enjoyed. She sat down with her director and presented a business case. She didn't say, "I want more money." She said, "I've been offered a role that reflects the market value of my contributions. However, I value our mission here. If we can match this compensation and formally restructure my role to focus on strategic growth instead of these administrative tasks, I would prefer to stay. If not, I understand, and I'm prepared to ensure a smooth handoff over the next month." She didn't say it with a tremor in her voice. She said it with the calm, flat effect of someone who has 16 weeks of runway sitting in a high-yield account. She wasn't bluffing. She was offering a trade. And because her director could sense, at a biological level, that she was prepared to walk away, the company found the budget. They didn't just match the offer. They promoted her to a leadership position that had been frozen for a year. Sarah didn't get that promotion because she was the best at project management. She got it because she was the only person in the room who didn't look like a hostage. This is the chemistry of respect. In the corporate poker game, everyone's cards are hidden, but everyone's tells are visible. When you have $10,000, your tells disappear. You stop sweating the small stuff. You stop participating in the office politics born of fear. You become the adult in the room. And the system, which is fundamentally built on managing children like dependency, doesn't know how to handle an adult except by giving them more power. However, there is a final, dangerous stage in the sovereign sequence, the protection of the threshold. Once you reach $10,000, the system will try to take it back. You will experience what I call the lifestyle gravity well. Suddenly, you will see a car repair that must be an upgrade, a vacation that you deserve for your hard work, or an investment opportunity that requires exactly $9,000 of your capital. This is the system attempting to pull you back into the fragility zone. It wants you manageable again. Protecting those $10,000 is not just about being frugal. It is an act of war. It is the defense of your own sovereignty. Because the moment that balance drops back to 2,000, your operator chemistry evaporates, and the chemistry of prey returns. You must defend the threshold as if your life depends on it, because your professional life does. So, where does this leave you? If you are sitting there with less than $1,000 in your name, the world likely feels like a series of non-negotiable demands. You feel like Mark, calculating the cost of a no and realizing you can't afford the price. But I want you to understand that the transition from Mark to Sarah is not a matter of luck or a massive windfall. It is a matter of a single, focused project. The hostage breaker is a project with a deadline. It is the bill you pay to buy back your own nervous system. For some of you, reaching $10,000 will take 6 months of radical lifestyle subtraction. For others, it might take 2 years of a grueling side hustle. But consider the alternative. Most people spend 40 years in the corporate loop without ever achieving decision immunity. They spend their entire lives paying the compliance premium, trading their health and their silence for a security that doesn't actually exist. The company that needs you today will replace you with an algorithm or a cheaper graduate tomorrow. In that world, the only real security is your ability to exist without them. $10,000 is your financial immune system. It doesn't make you a millionaire, but it prevents you from being a servant. It changes your relationship with the person who signs your paycheck from one of dependency to one of partnership. Once you are no longer a hostage, you start to see opportunities that were invisible before. You see the gaps in the market. You see the leverage in your negotiations. You see that this safe path was actually the most dangerous one, and that the ability to take a calculated risk is the only real wealth-building strategy left in the modern economy. This is the foundation. Once you have your $10,000, you don't stop. You move toward the $20,000 escape velocity we discussed in another video. You move toward the $50,000 untouchable status. But it all starts with the first 10. It starts with the decision to stop being manageable and start being sovereign. The system is rigged, but it is rigged against people who cannot afford to say no. The moment you can afford that word, you are no longer playing their game. You are playing yours. If this breakdown helped you see your career and your savings through a different lens, if it gave you a target that feels urgent, then stay with us. We deconstruct these hidden power structures every week. The ones that move wealth from the precarious to the prepared. The ones that nobody explains in the employee handbook. The door to the captive economy only locks from the outside. $10,000 is the key. It's time to use it.